All right, many thanks for staying with us right here in Morning at NTV. We are getting into our first Kickstarter conversation of the day, and the focus is on the NRM primaries set for the 4th of September, that is Friday this week. The campaigns have been a hot contestation. We've seen candidates fighting among each other. Violence has ensued in so many of the NRM hotspots around the country. Well, what could be precipitating this behavior, and where is the assurance that we might not see the same or a recurrence of the same violence on Friday this week? I'm now joined by the NRM publicist, Mr. Rogers Mulindo, in studio to unpack all this and more as far as these controversies are concerned within the NRM primaries. A very good morning, Mr. Mulindo. Many thanks for joining us on Morning at NTV.
Thank you, and good morning, Romeo, and to all our viewers, please, good morning.
First of all, let us in on some of the preparations on these primaries before we get into the violence and the corruption and so forth. What do the preparations look like ahead of Friday?
Of course, we have done our part. As we talk now, we are following the roadmap to the dot. As you are aware, we had the National Executive Council. That's about 860 members convening, and we had it virtually. And we have demonstrated to this country as NRM that digital campaigns are possible. When we had the voting on national conference, and we had our SEC members elected. Now, putting that aside, the nomination for the flag bearers, I mean candidates to contest in our primaries, was also done. And we have over 2,000 people vying for these seats. And that exercise was also very successful, and I want to congratulate Dr. Tango Doi and the commissioners for the work well done. I think it was, so far, it is so good, and we're optimistic that the end result will also be very positive and very friendly. Now, of course, where we have these numbers, you expect this kind of confusion. Some of these things happening are somehow expected. You know, when people are vying for leadership positions, they will have to, some kind of, the incumbents may resist, they don't want to leave. Those incoming may try to prove that they are stronger and better off than the other.
So this violence is normal?
To a certain extent, me, I'm not worried of that, but we want respect for one another. And if you respect one another, that's very important. But secondly, we also expect you to operate or to behave within the law. Nobody, whether you are in NRM or not in NRM, should behave outside the brackets of the Ugandan laws. And somewhere I've had some people accusing us that the NRM people are doing this and nobody's bothered. We don't control the army, we don't control the police. Those issues must be handled by the security agencies. And the good thing, I have even seen some NRM people being taken on by security agencies, which is, to me, is very good, because nobody should behave contrary to the law. Now, as we prepare for 4th, there are very many important things people have to note. But most important is the voting day. Because as we talk now, people are scattered all over. And then on 4th, people are coming together. And when they come together, that's where we want to put the emphasis. First of all, in every village, there will be a polling station.
Yes.
That's in every branch. And that's about 70,000, let's say 70,000 polling stations. We have more polling stations than the National Electoral Commission. And every polling station will be demarcated, so that everybody knows this is a special area for elections. And every polling station will be manned by a presiding officer. And that presiding officer will be assisted by polling assistants. The number of polling assistants will be determined by the Electoral Commission, depending on perhaps, because as I would have to explain later, there will be a polling agent standing behind every line, so depending on how many candidates are in that area. Then we shall also be having police constables. And these police constables are there to ensure that everything runs in order.
Yes, sir.
And of course, the voters will converge at 10 a.m., but the voting starts at 11. And it must have ended by 4 p.m. They are closing at 4 p.m. And when these people converge, the presiding officer will read out the names of the voters, because
Right.
non-voters may come. And then they will separate them, line up here. Then the candidates or their agents or the portraits, people will line behind this. But at least they should be 2 meters horizontally as they line up, but 2 meters apart. And then people will be asked to start lining behind. And once the lining is done, then these polling agents will stand behind each line, and then the counting starts. At that time, when the counting starts, nobody, whether your line is short or longer than the other one, nobody is supposed to move like this. And then the counting starts, and the counting must be loudly done, so that everyone hears 1, 2, 3, not saying, and then you come to declare and say 49. No, it must be loudly done. And voting by proxy, of course, is not allowed. Nobody will say, I'm unable to come there, but I'm for so and so. That will not be allowed. But remember, in the case of this confusion, where people try to bribe voters on that day, procuring ineligible persons to vote, or soliciting for votes on the polling day, or engaging in multiple voting, or even failing any action that is perceived to be contradicting with the Parliamentary Elections Act or Local Government Act. Those things are provided there. Automatically, Elections Act, everything will be handled accordingly. That's why we have the constables there. So Electoral Commission of the party, headed by Dr. Tangodoi, has the right to postpone an election and then communicate at a later date that this is when we shall have this election. So everybody must be very, very careful and extra careful, because even candidates, Electoral Commission can disqualify you, and you'll have nowhere to take your case.
Well, Mr. Mulinda, you've made your point. There will be some kind of social distancing and so forth. But in the youth elections, Mr. Mulinda, when the young people were lining behind each other, there was no social distancing at all. That's what we thought. There was no social distancing. There were fights. There was instances of corruption, district registrars calling candidates. Can you give me something so that I rule in your favor? And this time round, people have been deleted from registrars. People have been added who do not exist on the registers. What is happening? How do you plan to ensure that social distancing will be observed, number one? How do you plan to ensure that instances of violence will not resurge on that voting day? And how are you planning to weed out cases of corruption, cases of where people have been added to the register, and in some other cases, people have been subtracted off of the register, including the candidates?
Yeah, in the first place, it's regrettable that we had those kind of incidents happening for the youth elections, or especially the youth, not all SIG elections. But of course, the younger people, you know, that excitement when they are electing their leaders, and some registrars could not control this excitement. That was too bad. Cases of bribery, those are bad. But for SOPs, first of all, the Electoral Commission of Dr. Tanga says a polling station must be set up in an open place.
Yes, sir.
That is the first thing. But of course, these other SOPs that whoever comes must have a mask. There will be hand washing, sanitizing, no handshaking, and then people will disperse immediately after voting. All those guidelines have been sent. So I think this is more of a personal issue, that individually people have to look at this and say, yes, on a voting day, this is what I should do. I shouldn't go to cast a vote for somebody to gain out of this, and then I contract a disease. You shouldn't. It's more of a personal behavior now. Because Dr. Tanga will not be in every part of this country. He will be represented. Even the commissioners are two. They can't be everywhere. The staff are not more than 100 at the national level. They can't be everywhere. So there will be representation at the districts by the district elections officers. And you, the person coming, make sure you have your mask. You know, these days I've found people, when you ask, but why don't you put on a mask? He says, I have it. It's not about having it. It's about putting it on, and not putting it down here, but covering your nose and the mouth. It's for your good. I remember recently, I was even quarreling with some journalists. They come to my office and say, and they say, Rogers, this is too much. Now, one time they said, Muse is coming to the headquarters, and I called the editors to say, submit names, but I want people to go to Mulago for COVID testing. Some people say I'm falling sick, I'm not around, I'm this kind of thing. So we can protect ourselves. So that day, that's very important. Now, violence. I know we have started having issues.
Yes.
In Zimbabwe, I even heard you as I was coming. I think you talked about, you were making a press review. In Zimbabwe, we have issues here. I know we shall have issues in Rwengo, that Remiaga, yes, and other parts of the country.
Maogola.
But you people, you are taking a risk of being disqualified or postponing your election. And when we postpone, the Electoral Commission can choose. We first go to have the general elections and yours comes later. So discipline is very, very, very key. Now, for bribery, let everyone look at the other. Who is doing what? If there is evidence, and at every polling station we are trying to have some cameras. So you try to ensure that nobody does something contrary to the expected normal. And I think that one will help us.
But you haven't addressed the issue of the 5,000 that was supposed to go to some of these candidates, or many of them. The money did not reach, so maybe these people were incapacitated to carry out their campaigns as a result. So what are the immediate ramifications on these aspiring candidates?
That money was meant for the special interest groups. And we started getting reports the other day. And our Director of Finance and Administration, Hajati Neham Medina, is grounded on this matter. She was in Busoga yesterday. They spent the whole day in Busoga moving up and down over these matters. And of course, the reports indicate that some of our administrative secretaries, that's what we are getting, did not deliver the money. But some administrative secretaries are saying they delivered the money because they worked hand in hand with the youth chairpersons in the districts. But anyway, these matters, we are still investigating them. I can't conclude whether really the people have eaten this money or not. But as the director, Honorable Dombo, stated yesterday in the press conference, he said this matter will be brought to light at a later date. Maybe before the week ends, we shall have come out to say this admin or this youth chairperson behaved contrary to our expectations.
And over the weekend, we saw the State Minister for East African Affairs, Mr. Julius Maganda, almost getting short as he was preparing to carry out campaigns at a landing site. Imagine. You haven't reined in on your people very well, Mr. Mulindwa.
Training them?
Reining in on them, not to hold these rallies as a result of COVID-19. It seems like most of these strongmen are doing what they want. Yeah,
and actually, of course, there are some exaggerated statements. But they are actually, to a certain level, they are also true that some of our government officials are being reluctant in observing these SOPs, which is very bad. And we have said the Secretary General came out, Right Honorable Justin Kasoro, and said, arrest them. Because if somebody is misbehaving, take them, let the law take action, because we can't talk. I will not find a minister telling him, Honorable Minister, what you are doing is bad. I have seen ministers compiling money like this and doing what, but we can't tell them. Let the law take action against them. So that's very regrettable. I was here the other time. I was defending Honorable Anita, and I was continuing defending her because I said in that video, I don't see Honorable Anita. But where somebody is directly involved in actions that bring people together, and the president has been clear on this matter, day in, day out. But some people, I think they are just stubborn.
So let us in on what will be happening after the primaries on Friday.
Of course, we are going to have a lot of activities. We are going to engage ourselves in a number of activities. And September is going to be a very congested month. Because as we talk on 4th, we are going to have the primaries for MPs. And then on 6th, we shall have the sub-county SCIG committees. We shall have the elections. On 8th, the workers at the sub-county will elect their representatives or their delegates at the district level. Then we go on on 11th, actually. On 11th, the LC5 chairperson, the city lord mayors, the city mayors, district and state councillors will be elected. Then we go to 14th, city division mayor, municipal mayors, and elected councillors. That will be on 14th. Then we shall come to 17th, the municipality and city division SIG committees. On 16th, the L3 chairperson, town council mayors, municipal division chairperson, sub-county direct elected councillors, and sub-county women councillors. 18th, 19th, and 20th will be SIG councillors. That is 18th for sub-county level, 19th for municipal level, and 20th for district level. So the month of September is congested with a number of activities. And this is when we expect to have done almost 60% of our roadmap. So that we are left with a few. Actually, not even 60. I think about 75% will have done by end of September. So it's going to be a very busy month. And the Secretary General, when I informed her I was coming here, said, inform our people to make sure they observe the roadmap to the dot and ensure discipline. The Secretary General has also directed that members of the executive committees of the party at any level that have showed interest to contest in these primaries, their candidates or intended candidates tomorrow, they should step aside so that they hand over immediately to their next subordinates. I was discussing this with the Luwero chairperson, who is contesting, and then the vice chairperson is also contesting for MP. Then the treasurer is contesting, and then the general secretary is also contesting. And I said, yes, carry on the responsibility downwards to the publicity secretary. So this is, you know, when you are a candidate, and we expect you, the cardinal role you are supposed to play is to mobilize for the party. But when you are a candidate, you are mobilizing for yourselves. And that one puts you in a very tricky position, which we thought real, and I think the Secretary General in her wisdom saw this, and he said, you know, these people should step aside. So some people are trying to resist this, but sanctions will be taken against them.
What exactly is going to be happening to those people, especially in Luwero, who are saying we shall not be giving up our offices? No, actually in Luwero they have, but the example I was only giving, that the chairperson, Mr. Ronald Indaula, is going for parliament, and is the NRM chairperson. So he would have handed over to Madame Zena. But Madame Zena is also going for woman MP. She would have handed over to the treasurer. The treasurer, Honorable Biandala, is going for MP. Would have handed over to the general secretary, Honorable Naluanga Rebecca, who is also a candidate already. So the next person there is Omulongo Waswa, who is the publicity secretary. And that person is now acting NRM chairperson in Luwero. And this is just an example, because this is where I come from. But in every district, this is what they must do. You can't be a candidate at this moment when we expect you to be playing a cardinal role, and then you want to be the chairperson of the district. To them, their argument is that President Museveni did not give up his position, and all these people who are vying for the 9 topmost August did not give up their positions. And they also say there is nothing within the NRM party constitution that stops them from running for office while also running their offices. I think the roles are a bit different here. The national chairperson, for instance, by that time, the chairperson was not mobilizing for anybody. Those elections. The first national chairperson, the second national chairperson, they were not mobilizing. But just look at, for instance, what Honorable Chiwanda did. And some people thought maybe Chiwanda was on pressure. I want to assure you, I have heard Rafael Majezi, Honorable Godfrey Chiwanda, I think Mululi Mukasa, there is another one. All these constituencies where the incumbent NRM MPs have chosen to step aside. But those no position will win in those constituencies. Those tears, don't you think Mr. Chiwanda was forced? No, Mr. Chiwanda was right. You see, you have been an MP way he cried, for 3 terms. No, for 3 terms. And, you know, you are meeting your people. Indeed. You know, your cameras were a bit biased. You never showed us what other people were doing. But in the audience, everybody was shedding tears. Almost 70% of the audience. They so looked at it as a betrayal. It was an emotional kind of function. You are telling your people that you people unexpectedly, because what Chiwanda told me, he said, I had to go for both positions, but I knew if I won here, I wouldn't go for this one. And why? To me, I think Honorable Chiwanda, in Uganda, where a lot of, you know, we have always had challenges. I think last time we won by 59% presidency in Uganda. We need a second member who's going to find time, one, to reconcile people, especially after the primaries. And if you are to reconcile our people, you need to be neutral.
Honorable Chwanda has opted for that. But we also need somebody who's going to spread our gospel from house to house without other attachments. And I think in the future, this should be considered, that regional vice chairpersons shouldn't hold other responsibilities. So that they are empowered, fully mandated, they give them that empowerment, facilitated, and then they do the party work. When we do that, NRM will be here for life.
Let's also talk about lining behind the candidate or their agent as a mode of adult suffrage. You have some members within the NRM who have come out strongly to denounce lining up behind a candidate's back or their agent as a mode of adult suffrage, because it does not give them the chance of a secret ballot to choose whom they want to give their vote without actually telling the whole world who it is, because they say that has been also a recipe for disaster in many areas. If I'm seen lining up behind Rogers Mulindwa and my family supports DP or FDC, that could be a recipe for disaster. When I go back home, I could be attacked by members of the community. So you have so many people, even within the NRM camp, who are saying it was a bad idea to institute the lining behind of candidates' back as a mode of adult suffrage. Even in this age of COVID-19, when we are telling people to stay 6 feet apart, and then people are lining behind each other's back, it seems like this whole mode of election was not, informed, if you will.
First of all, I'll begin with the last one. Lining behind is even better off, because than being in the line to go for separate ballot thing. Because here you can distance yourself, and Dr. Tango Doy has explained this clearly, that if your line is long and there's not enough space behind you, you make it a U and you continue like this, so that the counting will also continue that way. But now, to me, we need to have the background why SEC and the National Conference recommended this amendment in our constitution to have lining up as a way of conducting our internal elections. But the main reason for this was to minimize commercialization of elections. Our people were spending a lot of money. This thing of lining up has taught people, or is teaching our voters, not to eat people's money.
So how was it stopping over commercialization of politics?
This is what I'm coming to. You see, if Rogers and Romeo are contesting, and the voter X there wants to eat your money and eat my money, or we bribe them for that matter, then automatically that voter X is in trouble. On the day of voting, where is he going to line up? And my agents are there and your agents are there.
Is that confirmation that politicians are giving out money as a form of bribery to voters so that they can give them their vote?
That's what they're doing.
Is it known? Is it a known fact?
To me, I think...
because we thought it was a rumor.
No, this is not a rumor. Voters and in all camps. It's not only in NRM, not only in FDC, not only in DP, not only in this newly created any whatever it is. I even don't. NUP. These people, they are candidates and they are individuals that are interested in bribing the voters. And they are voters who are also attracting the candidates to bribe them. And you know, corruption, the giver and the taker will have issues.
So that only
so for us, we are saying, now, if, first of all, if you eat my money, then there is accountability on the voting day. And they will tell me, you know, Romeo, of course I will have to do nothing to you, but our relationship will go down a bit. So we think this is another checkpoint for that. But also, we need transparency. If we are in NRM, we are family. And if we are family, what's the danger? We have seen bishops converging and then electing archbishops or electing bishops. And we have not heard them coming up to say, you know, you did this, because of the integrity. So for us, we are taking the lead.
But you cannot use the same mode of elections that bishops are using. If the same government is saying religious leaders should not be joining politics, you cannot borrow a leaf from a group of people you do not want to join your political realm.
No. It's not us saying, by the way, it is even their constitution.
And another thing,
they are not supposed to be partisan.
And another thing, what we've been hearing from the NRM strongmen is that the issue of lining behind each other was instituted as a measure to reduce on the cost of elections. But you've made it clear.
I said one of them. Of course, what you are saying is also true. I only thought we didn't have enough time.
We do.
Producing, you know, you have to print the ballot papers, the bureaucracy. You have to drive up to Kapuchora from Kampala to deliver the ballot papers. You have, so there was the ink here, the what, you know, a lot of course, the buckets. Let me tell you, the other time I think we spent close to 1 billion just on buying buckets. And this bucket for 60,000 villages at 10,000, and that's a lot of money. And after that, the village elections, those buckets disappear. Then you go to the next stage, you buy others. Then they tell you these ones go to misplaced. Then you buy. No, the cost was just too much. And as a party, I must confess, we still have challenges in mobilizing own resources. Because we get money from 4 channels. The first one is that money we get from government that comes through the Electoral Commission to all parties in Parliament, represented in Parliament, which is shared on numerical strength. That's one of them. The second one is the nomination fees. Like now we collected 4.2 billion from parliamentary candidates, aspirants. That's 2. The third one, we have every MP that wins and is on NRM ticket. You go to Parliament, you have to pay certain amount of money to NRM per month. And that money is collected by the government chief whip, who coordinates them, and then the money comes to the secretariat. And 4, our friends within and outside the country, just as you heard recently, the Nigerian president sending 150,000 to the president. We have those friends, either friends to the national chairperson or friends to us, other individuals, or friends to the party, because they are parties we have related with very well. And then they can give us support. So we still have challenge with the resources. And that's why the national chairperson came up with an idea and said, I must start a commercial arm of the party, and instituted a committee, which is, I think, chaired by Right Honorable Haji Moses Chigongo, and that committee has the Captain Mike Mkula, Honorable Rose Namayanja, and the others, to make sure we start thinking along those lines. But of course, we had the challenges. We didn't have a home.
Yes. And
we couldn't start thinking of this before we bought a home. But now that we paid off $1.9 million US to get that Chadondo Road plot. And when you go there now, you can see really pattern power. A lot of work has been done, and we intend to do more. So we need to, this is one area where we need to put emphasis in the next 5 years. All right, generating income for the party.
All right, Molindo, before we wrap this conversation and go into a very short break, it seems like from what we've had from this conversation, it's the politicians who are propagating this whole behavior of commercialization of politics. You come to a constituency, you promise the voter to give them something. You are propagating the behavior, not the voter who is asking. You came, you promised as politician X. Even politician Y came and they also promised. Don't you think it's the politicians who are propagating this behavior? And don't you think it's the same politicians who can do away with the same behavior?
I have been in elections. I've been in politics. And I think I'm ripe for parliament. This time I had even wanted to go. But I chose to wait a bit. Now, it can be the candidates, but it can also be the voters. The voters have developed a mentality that when we send you there, because I have had some candidates telling people, give me an opportunity to go and survive also. So when you hear that kind of statement, then the voters are saying, in exchange for your survival, you should also consider us here. And that comes into, say, give us some money. But all in all, this is wrong. But some MPs, you know, some people want to go to parliament when actually they have not mastered what they are supposed to do in parliament. And that's how people start promising roads. They start promising shallow wells or to construct boreholes. Now, the role of the MP is very clear, the oversight and the others and the others. Now, but this thing has worked both sides. There are MPs that have sacrificed money from their own pockets, and that's also okay to say, this church, I'm going to construct the church. Because they are getting salaries. The money they are getting shouldn't be for themselves alone. They are saying, I can sacrifice part of my salary to do this. That's also good. But the best MP would be that MP that can do 2 things. One, to lobby government to extend support to your constituency. 2, to lobby the private sector. Because you are an MP, by virtue of your status, I can go to UNESCO, I can go to any institution, the private sector, and lobby for facilities to say, our hospital needs some beds. Could you please help us? Write a proposal. If you're NMP with that brain, you write a proposal and the proposal will be considered, and then you look and say, I didn't have money myself, but this is what I've been able to do. Or you got the government. That's why constituencies that are purely opposition. I was with a certain MP yesterday somewhere from the opposition, and he was telling me, no, we can't help these people out of their poverty because they will come to appreciate the NRM government. Let them feel the pain. And this is what some opposition leaders are doing. So, but if if you are an MP, one, you go and sit in the local council sessions. You get to know, we sent this money from the center. This money is going toward the salaries, and this amount of money is meant to work on the roads and this and this and this. The health sector has this and this. And you follow up that. Then you go back and lobby and say, in our district, we have only a health center for, and there are 2. We don't have a hospital status. This is what we are supposed to do. This is the role of the MP. But when you engage yourself in pledging roads, construction, and what, you will collapse on the way. And a good number of them have collapsed.
NRM publicist Rogers Mlindwa, many thanks for having made the time to speak to Morning at NTV. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you too.
And you who is watching at home, many thanks for having made it a point to watch from 6:30 a.m. up to now. We are still moving ahead with Morning at NTV. More informative information coming your way shortly after this break. We'll be right back.